I'd start off with a bad first date story. This guy and I were meeting for the first time at the museum. Everything was going well until, out of nowhere, I started to feel a little nauseous. Before I had time to do anything, I vomited all over him and right in front of him, all over the floor of the museum. Food poisoning, definitely not the best way to impress someone on a first date. My initial reaction was filled with embarrassment, how I wish I didn't come, how he's probably disgusted by me. However, I could let this awkward moment define the date, or I could choose to see it as a unique way to break the ice. Sure, vomiting isn't the usual social etiquette, maybe it's kind of gross, but it's all just a matter of perception, right? Maybe one day I'd laugh and look back on it as a story to even share. Perhaps it's not as glamorous as the stories we tell ourselves about how perfect we want a first date to go. But it didn't stop us from connecting. In fact, I'd say it was a colorful beginning. And we're still friends today. Much like my perception of that moment, our perception of the world is also a result of the stories that we've internalized. Did you know that the sky, that beautiful blue canvas that we gaze at daily, is actually a result of how Earth's atmosphere scatters sunlight? Our perception often differs from reality. Today, I want to delve into the stories we tell ourselves, how our perceptions shape our lives, define our identities, and ultimately shape the trajectory of our lives. I used to find myself trapped in a cycle of inaction because I was stuck in my head, my thoughts filled with doubt, uncertainty, and questions and false perceptions about my own abilities. My pivotal moment emerged unexpectedly from the pages of a book called Life of Pi. On the surface, Life of Pi is a story about a boy who survives a shipwreck and spends months adrift on a lifeboat in the Pacific Ocean. But what truly struck me was how Pi uses storytelling as a means of survival and coping. Life of Pi taught me that we all possess the ability to craft our own stories, narratives that can empower us to live more fulfilling lives. This book inspired me to reevaluate my own narrative and to learn more about the power of the human mind to reshape the beliefs we have about the world. I'm excited to share some of those insights and discoveries I've made along this journey. Humans are natural storytellers. Stories preserve culture by passing myth, history, and knowledge between generations. Stories and films and books entertain us. In social settings, we use stories to laugh and bond together. Within ourselves, we construct our own stories to make sense of the world and our place in it. We like to think that we're always objective and logical, but our biases, beliefs, and experiences move these narratives further away from the truth. Today, I'd like to tell you about 3 of these biases and beliefs that shape how we see ourselves and the world we live in: egocentric bias, self-limiting beliefs, and upward social comparisons. As much as we'd like to believe otherwise, we tend to think that the world revolves around us. Psychologists call this egocentric bias. In an experiment known as the spotlight effect, young participants were sat in a room and told to sit tight before the experiment began. In reality, the real experiment had already begun. Simultaneously, in the next room, another group of participants were asked to put on a t-shirt featuring the iconic yet relatively cringeworthy pop star Barry Manilow. As an unpopular musician among college students at the time, his face would maximize the participants' embarrassment, making them feel like they were in the spotlight. These participants then paraded through the room, their shirts in full view of their peers. Afterwards, they asked the seated group how much they noticed the shirts. They also asked the t-shirt group to estimate how many people they thought noticed their shirts. Focused on themselves and their own embarrassment, they consistently overestimated the number of people who'd paid attention. What's the lesson in this? We always believe that others are paying more attention to us than they actually are. When we realize no one's noticing small details and flaws as much as we are, it allows us to be more in the moment, to care less what other people think, and to express ourselves more freely. Have you ever caught yourself saying, "I don't have time for this"? And then when you get back home, you're binge watching an entire TV series? Guilty as charged, right? It's a common phrase we use, but often when we say, "I don't have time," we're actually expressing that we don't value the activity we're avoiding. This phenomenon is closely tied to our beliefs, which can either empower us or limit us in various aspects of our lives, both personally and professionally. These beliefs are heavily influenced by external factors such as friends, family, upbringing, culture, religion. Singing taught me a lot about self-limiting beliefs. In high school, my singing teacher gave me a song that really pushed my boundaries. I kept telling her that the song was the wrong style for me, that it was out of my range and I wouldn't be able to hit the big final note at the end. Every time it came to that note, I stumbled. Then one day, home by myself, I hit the note without even trying. I realized that momentarily, I'd forgotten my self-limiting belief and I hadn't been thinking about it. I realized that I hadn't been limited by my abilities, but by the story that I was telling myself about those abilities. I was capable enough all along. We're constantly comparing ourselves to those that we perceive as better than us. We compare our graduate salary to the wealthy veteran with years of experience. In our first week at the gym, we look across the room and envy the fanatics who have been going for years. We see how good they look now, how successful they are now. We don't see their journey, the struggles they may have faced, and the effort they've put in, the hard work. My friend recently went to Paris. She reported back an interesting experience. How do we imagine Paris? It's the city of love. It's a dreamland. It's filled with romance and charm. She told me it's overcrowded, dirty, and smelly. I was surprised by this, so I had a look and found that there's actually an official medical illness where people get physically sick. It's called the Paris syndrome. They get sick after their experience in Paris doesn't live up to the idea that they've created. It sounds ridiculous, right? The symptoms of Paris syndrome include things like hallucinations and vomiting. Imagine hating Paris so much that you start hallucinating. Paris is a beautiful city. However, people often create unrealistic stories in their minds about just how perfect it is, based off of the portrayals in pop culture. Comparing these unrealistic expectations with reality leads to disappointment. We must also be wary that we don't compare ourselves to other people or images that we see, especially when we're only usually taking them at face value. The narratives we create are so important because we will always strive to align our actions with our beliefs. Our beliefs mold our thoughts, which shape our actions, which influences our experiences, and that changes our life. When you believe you're a tidy person, you'll be tidier. When you believe you're a lucky person, you'll see more opportunities arise around you. We resist change because it challenges the beliefs that have shaped our past actions and preserved our present sense of self. The stories we tell ourselves can either propel us towards success or hinder our progress. But the question remains, how do we tell ourselves the right story? When I was preparing for this TED Talk, I wanted to leave you with something easy to remember, a framework you could implement in your own life. I had lots of ideas, but wanted to make it simple, and then it hit me, I could give you an acronym. So I came up with the CARE method. CARE stands for clarify the narrative, activate your story, redesign your actions and rewire your brain, and embrace transformation. It's a 4-step process for changing a specific story that we're telling ourselves to achieve a goal. The first step is to identify the specific story or belief that we want to change, to clarify the narrative. This is easier said than done. We all have a myriad of narratives in our minds, some positive, some negative. We can't change them all at once. We must identify and prioritize which stories we'd like to focus on first based on our goals. This requires self-awareness and reflection. It can be helpful to write down every belief, thought, or feeling that's holding us back. Remember, self-acceptance is key. It's okay to be where we are now, as long as we start moving forward. In this step, we need to believe that change is possible. One of the most limiting beliefs we can have is that we're incapable of change. In psychology, there's a concept called neuroplasticity, the idea that our brains can change. Regardless of age, anyone's brain has the ability to adapt and evolve. Think of your brain as a forest with countless paths. The more you use a path, the more defined it becomes. Similarly, your brain builds familiar pathways as you repeatedly experience certain thoughts, actions, and emotions. But you can change these pathways by consciously challenging old narratives, practicing new beliefs, and shaping your brain's architecture over time. Step 3 is the most challenging step. It's taking action and building those new pathways while letting old pathways overgrow. Action will reinforce our new narratives. There are 3 specific strategies I'd like to share for effectively navigating this step. Overcome resistance, demolish doubt, and maintain momentum. Firstly, it needs to be as easy as possible to take action to overcome resistance from your brain. A key way to make taking action easier is to break it down and take small steps. About a year ago, I began journaling. I like recording my memories so my future self can read back over it. I used to be reluctant to write in my journal because I would procrastinate. Then when I finally sat down to write, I would force myself to write out every single thing that happened in the entire week. My hand was never happy afterwards. One day, I decided to just sum up my entire week in a single line, just one line. The next week, I did it again. Then I tried doing that every day. After a while, journaling became a daily habit. Over time, that one line got longer and longer, and now I can write pages and pages with no problem. It's easy to be impatient and want to achieve our goals now, or to think that we're superhuman and can completely transform overnight. But actually, it takes strength to slow down and be patient with taking small steps. writing just one line at a time. Secondly, fight the doubt. Our internal stories don't only hold us back from taking action, but also while we take action. It's essential to combat self-doubt and negative self-talk. Those underlying beliefs you identified won't go away forever. They'll come back to haunt you. Learn to recognize them. Reframe your internal monologue into positive self-affirmations and don't accept the excuses or doubt. Lastly, our new habits need to be enjoyable, fulfilling, or satisfying. There's a big association between how much we enjoy something and how good we are at it. Enjoying a habit, skill, or interest can take time. Celebrate each small step as a win. Internalize your achievements. You might write down what you did in a day that you're proud of. Recognize the progress that you're making with each day and each action. Take the time to celebrate yourself. Transforming your internal narratives isn't a one-time thing. Old stories will reawaken. New anxieties will arise to drag you down. But if you consistently work to reshape your internal narratives, self-transformation will become second nature. You set small goals that are easy to achieve, you achieve them, and then celebrate your success. Those little victories will fuel you to repeat step one again. Rinse and repeat until you achieve your goals and until you've written the story that you want to tell yourself. As a kid, I was never fond of sports or PE or good at it. However, staying active is still important to me. In the past couple of years, I decided to try running and to make it a habit. It was a struggle, not only because it felt unnatural and foreign, which it would any beginner, but because of the story I kept telling myself that I wasn't athletic enough or good at running, stemming from when I was a child. I didn't give up. I broke down my goal of making running a habit into small steps by challenging myself to run just 15 minutes, which felt achievable. When negative thoughts popped up like, I'm running so slow, I'm not fit enough, I reframed them. I told myself I'm strong and capable. I'm fitter today than I was yesterday. I'm so grateful to be out here having this privilege to move my body. Over time, those old pathways holding beliefs about my inability to be a runner faded away as I continuously engaged with a new pathway in my brain. My perception of myself shifted. I began to see myself as a runner rather than an unsporty person going for a run. We're talking about stories today. Here I changed my story. Our lives are shaped by the stories we tell ourselves. Those stories can either limit us and our potential or set us on a path to growth and fulfillment. The three cognitive phenomena, egocentric bias, self-limiting beliefs, and upward social comparison, are examples of how our biases can lead us to creating stories that hold us back in our lives. The CARE method provides a practical framework to identify and change these stories to empower us. Clarify the narrative, activate your story, redesign your actions and rewire your brain, and embrace transformation. By following these steps, we can take control of our narratives and shape our lives according to our desired outcomes. Though we probably won't ever be stuck out at sea like the boy is in Life of Pi, life will always have obstacles and challenges to overcome. In those moments, it will be up to us to choose how we respond and what story we create in our minds. When you look up at the sky, it's blue, isn't it? If you went to outer space, the sky would be dark and black. There's always a different perspective. You have the power to choose which perspective you take. We're the authors of our own narratives, and we have the power to write our stories one chapter at a time.